Okay, so as of June 2026, we have basically crossed a massive, historic line in modern medicine. The world's very first human trial to physically make old cells young again has officially kicked off. And I want to be super clear here. We aren't just talking about slowing down the aging process. No, we're talking about literally reversing the biological clock inside a living human being. It's a completely mind-bending concept, right? The implications for humanity are just absolutely massive. So let's jump right into this explainer.
So let's start things off by asking a pretty wild, profound question. Is aging actually a disease? Because, traditionally we've all just accepted getting older as this absolute inevitability. It's a one-way street, right? The wear and tear just sort of accumulates and there is nothing you can really do about it. But the scientists behind this incredible new research are completely challenging that fundamental assumption. They're setting the stage for a therapy that treats cellular aging not as some unstoppable, irreversible decline, but as a condition that can actually be treated and reversed. It's a total paradigm shift in how we understand human biology.
And a groundbreaking clinical trial sponsored by Life Biosciences, which is a company based out of Boston, Massachusetts, is turning this whole sci-fi dream of age reversal into concrete medical reality. They recently announced that they've officially treated their very first human participant. What they're doing is testing this highly anticipated gene therapy that aims to essentially coax aged, damaged cells into taking on a younger identity. So this isn't just some petri dish experiment in a lab anymore, it's a real therapy being tested right now in a real person, aiming to do what humanity has literally dreamed of doing for millennia.
Section 1, Targeting Glaucoma, the Tragedy of Permanent Blindness.
Now, to really ground this abstract science, we need to look at the tangible human struggle here. This trial isn't just testing age reversal for, cosmetic vanity. It's targeting a very specific, devastating disease that affects the optic nerve. Think of the optic nerve as this vital fiber optic cable. Its primary job is to channel visual information directly from your retina straight to your brain. Well, in patients with glaucoma, these specific nerve fibers get damaged, and that leads to permanent blindness. Why? Because these neurons are simply not capable of natural regeneration. Once they die off, they are gone for good. Our bodies just genuinely do not know how to rebuild them.
Section 2. Turning back the clock. The biology of rejuvenation.
So how exactly do you go about fixing a nerve that the body itself isn't programmed to repair? Well, the answer lies in this fascinating biological concept called partial reprogramming. If you think of a cell's lifespan as a clock, as that cell ages, the clock ticks forward, the cell gets tired, and it completely loses its ability to heal. What researchers are doing is manually winding that clock backward. They are gently nudging these aged adult cells back in time to restore those youthful regenerative features. But, and this is a really vital catch, they have to do it without the cell losing its specialized identity. You want the cell to be young enough to heal itself, sure, but definitely not so young that it entirely forgets its job is to be an optic nerve cell.
And the magic number to actually make this happen is 3. Scientists have known for a while now that there are 4 specific genes you can manipulate in a lab to reprogram adult cells all the way back into a completely blank slate stem cell. But going all the way back to a blank slate inside a living organ is exceptionally dangerous. So Life Biosciences is harnessing exactly 3 of those 4 genes to safely trigger a youthful state without wiping the cell's memory entirely. It is an incredibly delicate, high-stakes biological balancing act.
Let's look at how this practically plays out step by step in the trial. Step 1. The therapy targets those damaged, aged adult neurons sitting in the patient's eye. Step 2. The therapy switches on those 3 specific reprogramming genes we just talked about. Step 3. The proteins encoded by those genes immediately get to work, nudging those once unfixable cells into a youthful regenerating state. If this all works as planned, those neurons that were previously completely incapable of regeneration will actually wake up, begin to heal, and rebuild that absolutely vital connection between the eye and the brain.
This timeline brilliantly illustrates just how incredibly fast this science is moving. Back in 2020, geneticist David Sinclair and his colleagues at Harvard Medical School published this landmark study. They showed that activating these 3 genes could actually reverse vision loss in elderly mice that had damaged optic nerves. From there, through the mid-2020s, Life Biosciences successfully tested this exact approach on rodents and monkeys, and they did it without seeing any serious adverse effects. And now, just 6 years after that initial mouse study, in 2026, we have the very first human participant being treated. I mean, that is an absolutely blistering pace for medical science. It really tells you just how promising this data actually is.
Section 3. The Fountain of Youth Paradox, the razor-thin margin of error.
Now we need to be realistic here. This isn't all just magic and miracles.
Whenever you start messing with the fundamental programming of human biology, there is massive risk involved. On one hand, you have this incredible upside. Successful partial reprogramming where the cell regains its youth and vision is actually restored. But there is a truly terrifying downside. If you over-reprogram the cell, if you rewind that biological clock just a little too far, it loses its identity entirely. And you know what you call a cell that forgets its job and just starts growing and dividing rapidly? That is the literal definition of cancer. That is the huge paradox we are looking at. The exact same mechanism that promises us the fountain of youth can also tip those cells into a cancerous, life-threatening state.
I really think this quote hits the nail on the head and captures the immense tension of this moment in science. Matt Kaberlin, who is a longevity expert and the co-founder of OptiSpan, says that technology is still really early, and the potential for catastrophic side effects is high. I really want that word catastrophic to sink in for a second. While the animal studies haven't shown serious adverse effects yet, moving from a mouse to human biology is a staggering leap. The researchers have to exercise extreme, meticulous caution because a tiny, microscopic miscalculation in gene activation could have truly devastating consequences for the patient.
So you might be wondering, if the risks are so astronomically high, why start here? Well, it turns out the eye is actually the perfect testing ground. First off, there's a much lower chance of life-threatening side effects. If something goes wrong and a tumor develops, it is far less immediately lethal than if you were testing this in, say, the heart, the liver, or the brain. Second, the eye is relatively isolated, meaning any changes are contained compared to other major organs. And third, doctors can literally look right directly into the eye to meticulously measure the neuron regeneration as it happens. It is absolutely the smartest, safest way to mitigate those catastrophic risks while still proving that this unbelievable science actually works in a living, breathing human being.
Which ultimately leads us to our final and honestly perhaps most exciting thought. Yes, this specific trial is all about curing glaucoma, but let's look at the bigger picture. It's also a definitive proof of concept for the entire field of human longevity. If Life Biosciences can prove that we can safely turn back the biological clock in the neurons of the human eye without causing cancer, well, which organ is next? Could we actually rejuvenate a failing heart? Could we reverse degeneration in the human brain? We are standing on the absolute bleeding edge of medicine today, watching a trial unfold that could fundamentally redefine what it actually means to grow old. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Definitely keep your eyes on this science because it is absolutely going to change everything.